When people think about danger, they picture obvious threats guns, heights, fire, things that look deadly. But some of the most lethal things in the world don't announce themselves at all. You walk past them, you use them, you trust them, and that's exactly why they work. Today, we're counting down the 5 deadliest things you didn't know were deadly. Not horror stories, not urban legends, real objects and situations tied to real injuries and real deaths, things people underestimated because they looked ordinary, familiar, or safe. For each one, we'll break down what it is, how it actually harms people, the real-world cases behind it, and the one rule that could keep you alive. And you don't want to miss number one because it's something almost everyone encounters, almost everywhere. And the reason it's dangerous is the very reason no one suspects it. Let's begin with number 5. Number 5, falling backward from a standing position. This one doesn't sound dangerous at all. In fact, most people don't even register it as a real risk. You didn't fall off a ladder. You didn't fall down a flight of stairs. You didn't tumble from a roof or a cliff. You just slipped and fell backward. And that's exactly why it's deadly. A backward fall from standing height is one of the most underestimated lethal events in everyday life. It looks minor. It feels embarrassing more than alarming. People shake it off, joke about it, say they're fine, and move on. But emergency rooms around the world see the same outcome over and over again, a simple fall that turns into a catastrophic head injury hours later. The problem is where the body takes the impact. When people fall forward, the body has built-in defenses. Arms come out, knees bend, force spreads across multiple points. But when you fall backward, those reflexes often fail. Balance is already lost, the arms are late, and the back of the head takes the full force. That part of the skull protects the brainstem, the area responsible for breathing, heart rate, and consciousness. A hard strike there doesn't need to crack bone to be lethal. It just needs to transmit enough force to the brain. And force doesn't care how far you fell. Modern surfaces make this worse. Tile floors, concrete sidewalks, asphalt parking lots, hardwood, stone, they don't absorb energy, they reflect it. So even a fall from standing height can deliver a shock equivalent to something far more dramatic. This is why doctors take these injuries so seriously. Someone slips in the shower, misses a curb, trips over a rug, falls backward, hits their head, stands up and insists they're okay. No bleeding, no obvious injury, maybe a mild headache. So they go home, then hours later symptoms start to appear. Confusion, nausea, vomiting, slurred speech, a headache that keeps building instead of fading. By the time it's clear something is wrong, pressure is already rising inside the skull. This is how delayed brain bleeds happen. Subdural hematomas don't always announce themselves immediately. Blood can slowly collect between the brain and the skull, compressing brain tissue over time. The person feels off before they feel injured, and that delay is what makes these falls so dangerous. Alcohol turns this risk into a nightmare. Alcohol dulls balance, slows reaction time, and removes the body's ability to brace properly. It also masks pain and clouds judgment. A drunk person falls backward, hits their head, feels okay, and goes to sleep. Emergency responders see this scenario constantly. Sometimes the person never wakes up. And while older adults are especially vulnerable, this isn't just an elderly problem. Healthy adults, athletes, construction workers, partygoers, people in their 20s and 30s have died from backward falls that looked harmless to everyone around them. That's what earns this spot on the list. There are no warning signs, no safety labels, no instinctive fear response. People respect. Gravity only when there's a visible drop. But gravity doesn't need a height. It just needs one moment of lost balance. So here's the survival rule for number 5. If someone falls backward and hits their head, take it seriously every time. Embarrassment is not a medical assessment. Watch for worsening headache, confusion, vomiting, drowsiness, or personality changes. And if alcohol was involved, assume the risk is higher than it feels and get help early. Because number 5 proves something unsettling. You don't need a dangerous place to die. Sometimes you just need one bad step. And number 4 is worse because it's something people bring into their homes on purpose, believing it makes them safer. Number 4. Carbon monoxide from safe home appliances. This is one of the deadliest things on this list because it doesn't hurt, it doesn't scare you, and it doesn't warn you. Carbon monoxide poisoning doesn't feel like danger. It feels like being tired, headache, dizziness, nausea, confusion, the kind of symptoms people blame on stress, the flu, a long day, or not drinking enough water. And while you're trying to push through it, the gas keeps doing its work. Carbon monoxide is produced whenever fuel burns. Gas stoves, furnaces, water heaters, fireplaces, generators, cars warming up in garages. All of these are normal parts of daily life. None of them look dangerous when they're working the way you expect them to. That's what makes this lethal. Carbon monoxide has no smell, no color, no taste. You can be breathing it in for hours without realizing anything is wrong. And once it enters your body, it replaces oxygen in your blood. Your cells begin to suffocate while you're still breathing. The brain is hit first. People exposed to carbon monoxide often describe a strange mental fog. Thoughts slow down, judgment fades. You don't feel panicked, you feel sleepy, and that's the trap. The gas disables the very part of the brain that would normally tell you to get out. This is why victims are often found lying down. They didn't collapse in terror. They didn't run for help. They laid down because they felt weak and never stood back up. Entire families have died this way. Parents, children, pets, sometimes overnight, sometimes during the day. Investigations often trace it back to something painfully ordinary: a blocked vent, a cracked heat exchanger, a generator running too close to the house, or a car left running in a garage with the door open just a little. What makes this especially cruel is that people often trust the source. The furnace was professionally installed. The fireplace worked for years. The stove is just gas. And because carbon monoxide doesn't announce itself, people assume everything is fine right up until it isn't. Cold weather makes this worse. Homes are sealed tightly, windows stay closed, heaters run longer. Any malfunction allows the gas to accumulate quietly. By the time symptoms become obvious, exposure may already be severe, and carbon monoxide doesn't care how healthy you are. Young, athletic people pass out. Children succumb faster because their bodies absorb oxygen differently. Pets collapse first, often the only early warning anyone gets. That's why emergency responders say the same thing again and again. If multiple people in a home feel sick at the same time, assume carbon monoxide until proven otherwise. This belongs at number 4 because people don't treat it like a threat. They treat it like a maintenance issue, something that happens to other households, something a detector will magically solve. But detectors don't help if they're missing, broken, out of batteries, or placed incorrectly, and they don't help if people ignore them because it's probably nothing. So here's the survival rule for number 4. Install carbon monoxide detectors near sleeping areas and fuel-burning appliances. Replace batteries regularly. Never run generators, grills, or vehicles near enclosed spaces. And if a detector goes off or everyone feels sick at once, leave immediately and get fresh air before trying to figure it out. Because number 4 proves something terrifying. The most dangerous gas in your life doesn't smell bad, doesn't burn, and doesn't announce itself. And number 3 is worse because it's something people use constantly right against their body, believing it's completely harmless. Number 3. Space heaters used the safe way. This one feels especially cruel because most of the people who get hurt weren't being careless. They bought a modern space heater, they read the instructions, they placed it where it seemed reasonable, and that's exactly how the danger slips in. Space heaters are designed to do one thing extremely well: produce intense, concentrated heat. That's not a side effect, that's the feature. And whenever heat is involved, the margin for error is thin, very thin. Most heater-related disasters don't begin with sparks or flames. They begin with comfort, a cold room, a long winter night, a heater pulled a little closer to the couch, a little closer to the bed, a little closer to the place where people actually sit or sleep. Nothing touches it, nothing smells wrong, everything feels fine. Until time enters the equation, fabric shifts, a blanket slowly droops, a curtain moves just enough, a pillow slides closer while someone sleeps. Space heaters don't need much contact to become dangerous. They don't warm gently, they radiate heat aggressively. Synthetic fabrics melt before they burn. Foam ignites faster than people expect. And once something catches, the fire doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly, feeding on nearby material. This is why so many fatal space heater fires happen at night. People are asleep. Their senses are dulled. Smoke builds before alarms react. By the time someone wakes up, visibility is gone, heat has spread, and escape routes are already compromised. Panic follows and panic steals. Precious seconds. But fire isn't the only risk. Some heaters, especially fuel-based or improperly ventilated models, can produce carbon monoxide or other combustion byproducts. Even electric heaters can contribute to dangerous conditions when used in sealed rooms where air circulation is poor. People assume the risk is flames, so they miss the symptoms of poisoning. Headache, dizziness, confusion, fatigue. They feel off, they sit down, they lie down, and that's when it becomes life-threatening. Electrical failure is another silent contributor. Space heaters draw a lot of power. Older wiring, overloaded outlets, or cheap extension cords can heat up internally over time. Nothing looks wrong on the surface. The heater keeps working. But inside the wall, insulation degrades, wires overheat, and sparks form where no one can see them. Fires that start this way don't give you a warning. They emerge already dangerous. What makes this risk so persistent is familiarity. Space heaters are everywhere. They're sold next to candles, blankets, and pillows. They're framed as cozy solutions, not hazards. People grow up with them, so they stop treating them with respect. They assume newer models are smart enough to protect them. But safety features aren't guarantees. Auto shutoff sensors fail, tip-over switches don't always trigger, cheap units cut corners, and physics doesn't care how new the heater is. Children and pets make this even riskier. Kids don't understand heat boundaries. Pets bump into heaters, knock them over, or curl up too close. Elderly individuals may not react quickly enough if something starts to smolder. Emergency responders see the same pattern every winter. A heater meant to make life more comfortable becomes the ignition point for fires, burns, smoke inhalation, and fatalities, often in homes where people believed they were being careful. That's why this earns the number 3 spot, not because space heaters are evil, but because people underestimate how little it takes for heat to turn from helpful to catastrophic. So here's the survival rule for number 3. Treat space heaters like open flames. Keep them far from anything that can burn. Never place them near beds, couches, or curtains. Never use extension cords. Never leave them running while you sleep. And if something feels off, unusual heat, strange smells, inconsistent behavior, unplug it immediately. Because number 3 proves a hard truth. You don't need recklessness for disaster. You just need heat, time, and one moment where nothing seems wrong. And number 2 is worse, because it's something people trust every day without ever questioning what it's actually doing to them. Number 2, plastic food containers. You microwave every day. This one is dangerous because it doesn't feel like a risk at all. It feels like convenience. You cook, you store leftovers, you reheat them the next day, and you move on with your life. Millions of people do this multiple times a day without ever stopping to question what's actually happening inside that container. Plastic food containers were designed to make life easier, not safer. When heat is applied, especially microwave heat, the structure of plastic changes. It doesn't always melt. It doesn't always warp. Sometimes it looks completely normal, but on a chemical level, things are moving. As plastic heats up, certain compounds can migrate out of the container and into your food. You can't see it, you can't taste it, and most of the time, you don't feel anything immediately. That's what makes this so deceptive. The harm isn't dramatic, it's cumulative. For years, scientists have studied chemicals like BPA and phthalates, which are commonly used to make plastics flexible and durable. These compounds can interfere with hormone systems, affecting metabolism, fertility, and development. Many manufacturers now label products BPA-free, but that label doesn't always mean safe. In some cases, BPA has simply been replaced with similar chemicals that behave the same way in the body. Microwaving accelerates the problem. Heat speeds up chemical migration. Fatty foods make it worse because many of these compounds dissolve more easily in fat. So reheating greasy leftovers in plastic creates the perfect conditions for exposure, even if the container is marketed as microwave safe. The phrase microwave safe is one of the most misunderstood labels in modern kitchens. It doesn't mean chemical-free, it usually means the container won't melt or catch fire under normal use. It says nothing about what the plastic releases into food when it's heated again and again. The effects don't show up right away. They show up slowly. People experience unexplained fatigue, hormone disruptions, fertility issues, or metabolic changes, and never connect them to something as ordinary as their lunch container. Exposure happens in tiny doses, but it happens repeatedly, day after day, year after year. What makes this habit especially dangerous is how early it starts. Children are exposed through plastic baby bottles, sippy cups, and reheated meals. Developing bodies are more sensitive to chemical interference. The earlier the exposure, the greater the potential impact over time. This isn't about panic, it's about understanding risk. Plastic doesn't need to be toxic in the traditional sense to be harmful. It just needs to interfere subtly with systems the body depends on to regulate itself. Hormones don't require large disruptions to cause meaningful effects. This habit earns the number 2 spot because it hides in plain sight. There are no warning signs, no immediate symptoms, no moment where you realize something went wrong. It's simply a slow exchange between heat, plastic, and food that most people never question. The survival rule here is simple and practical. Don't microwave food in plastic. Use glass or ceramic containers whenever heat is involved. If plastic is used for storage, keep it for cold foods only. Replace old containers, especially those that are scratched or cloudy, because damage increases chemical migration. Because number 2 shows us something unsettling. Danger doesn't always come from dramatic events. Sometimes it comes from habits that feel so normal we stop thinking about them altogether. And number 1 is worse because it's something people interact with constantly, something they trust, depend on, and never imagine could turn deadly. Number 1. Water you assume is safe. This is number 1 because it's the danger nobody ever stops to question. Water is supposed to be the one thing you don't have to think about. You turn on the tap, you fill a glass, you take a sip without hesitation. You cook with it, bathe in it, brush your teeth with it, and give it to your children and pets without a second thought. It's woven so deeply into daily life that the idea of it being dangerous feels almost offensive, and that's exactly why it's so deadly. When something goes wrong, in countless real cases around the world, people didn't discover their water was harming them until years after the damage had already begun. Not because they were careless, but because the water never looked, smelled, or tasted wrong. It flowed clear, it felt normal, it did everything water is supposed to do. Meanwhile, invisible contaminants were doing something very different inside the body. One of the most well-known examples is lead. Lead doesn't announce itself. It doesn't cloud the water or change the flavor. It leaches slowly from aging pipes, fixtures, or solder, especially when water chemistry shifts slightly. Families drink it for months or years, completely unaware. By the time symptoms appear, the exposure is already embedded in the body. Parents start noticing changes in their children, learning difficulties, behavioral shifts, delays that don't quite make sense. Adults feel fatigue, headaches, memory issues. Doctors treat symptoms without ever suspecting the tap. And when the truth finally comes out, it's devastating because lead damage, especially in children, is often permanent. But lead is only one chapter of the story. In agricultural regions, fertilizer runoff seeps into groundwater, carrying nitrates into private wells. The water still looks clean, still tastes fine. But infants who consume it can develop a condition where their blood struggles to carry oxygen properly. Adults exposed over time may face cardiovascular and metabolic problems. Again, there's no warning label on the faucet. Then there are bacteria and parasites. After floods, storms, infrastructure failures, or aging pipe systems, pathogens can enter water supplies. People get sick and assume it's a stomach bug, something they ate, a bad meal. Few people suspect the water they drink every day. For elderly individuals, children, or those with weakened immune systems, these infections can become life-threatening. What makes this so dangerous is how trust works. People trust that water is monitored, that someone is watching, that if there were a real problem, alarms would sound and warnings would go out immediately. But history shows that alerts often come late, after exposure has already happened, sometimes because of bureaucracy, sometimes because of cost, sometimes because nobody wanted to admit there was a problem. And water doesn't only affect you when you drink it. Hot showers turn water into steam that you inhale deeply. Certain chemicals become airborne when heated. Skin absorbs contaminants more easily than people realize. Food cooked in contaminated water concentrates whatever was already present. Exposure becomes constant, not occasional. Private wells are especially vulnerable. Unlike municipal systems, they aren't continuously regulated. Testing is the homeowner's responsibility. Many wells go years, sometimes decades, without being checked, even though groundwater conditions can change due to nearby construction, drought, industrial activity, or agricultural shifts. Even bottled water doesn't guarantee safety. Some bottled sources have been found to contain microplastics, chemical residues, or contaminants similar to tap water. Plastic packaging introduces its own risks, especially when bottles are stored in heat or for long periods. This is why water earns the #1 spot. You can avoid certain products, you can change habits, you can choose not to use specific items, but you cannot opt out of water. It is the one thing your body depends on every single day in large quantities without exception. And when the thing designed to sustain life becomes the delivery system for harm, the danger multiplies quietly. So the survival rule here isn't fear, it's vigilance. Know where your water comes from. Test private wells regularly. Pay attention to local water quality reports, use certified filtration systems when appropriate, and never assume that clear means clean, because the deadliest things in the world aren't always obvious threats. Sometimes they're the things you trust so completely that you never think to ask if they could hurt you. And that's the unsettling pattern behind this list. The deadliest things aren't the ones that look dangerous. They're the ones that feel normal, familiar, safe enough to ignore. So take this with you. Question the ordinary. Pay attention to the things you interact with every day, not because you should live in fear, but because awareness is what keeps ordinary moments from turning into irreversible ones. Now I want to know, which one caught you off guard the most? If you want more everyday dangers exposed with real stories and real explanations, subscribe to this channel. And next, we're breaking down the 5 deadliest common foods in the world. And once you see what made the list, you won't look at your next meal the same way.